In the Union Budget presented by the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman for 2024-25, urban development made it to the top 9 priorities of this government as it prepares to take the country on the path of strong development and all-round prosperity. On the urban agenda, we will focus on 2 of the key budget announcements aimed at making property and home ownership easier: digitization of all urban land records and the case for reducing stamp duties on property transactions. Joining us today, Niranjan Hiranandani, founder and MD of Hiranandani Group; Ashwin Chadha, CEO of India Sotheby's International Realty; and Sanjay Kumar, CEO of Geospatial World. Mr. Hiranandani, land digitization. Much has been spoken about many aspects, and of course taxes being the biggest. But here's my question to you. Urban land records, despite the best efforts, remain a little bit of a mess. It was part of government's first 100-day plan. The budget has given a clearer shape, saying that it has to be done across the country for urban areas in addition to rural areas in the next 3 years, and fiscal incentives will be provided. Some states are ahead, some states are not. Tell me, how does this really impact me as a land or a homeowner living in an urban area?
Manisha, fantastic, beautiful question. Nobody's asked it, but let me answer your question so well. I have bought many properties in my life. There's one property which I bought where the revenue record showed me that X person is the owner of the property. After I bought it, I found out that there were actually 3 other co-owners who are also associated with the property. So there were no records which could be reliable. And I had to again go and settle with those other 3 people about the land records and their right to the property. And this is after I'd almost started the development of the property and taken it to certain lengths. Now, the purpose of doing digitization and GIS mapping is to see that the title to the properties that you have, I have, or anybody has is now put perfectly by digitization on the records. And there's a GIS mapping which will completely create that scene. After that is done, the government will then guarantee, assure, or direct that the names which are there in the revenue records or the records which they mandate, whether urban development or revenue department, will be the title to the property. Hence, when I go to purchase the property, or any person who's doing it is not at a risk of anything else. What are the challenges? Land is a state subject. So the land records, etc., are with the states. Number 2, that there are various provisions of law in terms of division of family, Hindu undivided family holdings, different people who have died, and the successions that are there in the revenue record. All these are very complicated issues which are there over a period of time. So the purpose is to create land titles which are perfect. Areas in terms of GIS mapping will give you the true area for this project. And also the fact that it will then provide any person who buys the property or sells the property knows exactly what he is supposed to get or she is supposed to get. And also the person who purchases is very certain about the situation that you have.
All right. So first of all the grayness of property ownership is taken away. There is clear title. Sanjay, I'm going to come to you because you have the GIS technology and you've also been a proponent of national land records and digitization and for the longest time. Now, 100,000 villages have already been mapped. This is not new. I think this is again a thrust for urban areas. But you've maintained that it's far more complicated in urban areas than rural India, which is a sort of a reverse situation, isn't it? Tell me why, and what are the hurdles that you think need to be crossed in terms of coordination between state and center to actually make this happen?
So, Manisha, thank you very much for the opportunity first to talk to you and the panel. See, first of all, land digitization is not something new. It has been going on for the last 20 years in the name of modernization of land records as a project being done by Ministry of Land Resources. What is unique now? So it has been going on in the rural areas. And this is the first time when the land digitization of urban areas has been brought to the forefront. Well, land is an asset And I would say this whole process would be conversion of land to property. So why it is unique, that urban is definitely more complex. So many rural areas have been added to the urban areas in last few years, and this urbanization is going on. So in the rural areas, you have an administrative redressal system as well. Whereas in the urban areas, we do not have any administrative redressal system of any of the disputes. You only have a way to go to the court. As Niranjan talked about, when you buy some land in urban areas, it's just a transaction between two people, and you just go and register that in the court or in the registrar office. And you know, it could actually belong to somebody else. You have no records. You have no records, chain of records, like 100 years or 150 years. It's not that those records are not available, but they are not digitalized. They're not organized for whatever regions, could be vested regions or could be any other region for that. But that record digitalization of the chain is so important. So this project is a pilot project at the moment, which is being taken by the government of India, probably about in 10 cities, which they will start with, as per my information, would actually get into the digitalization of the records. And there are two things. One is the records and ownership. Second is also the demarcation of the land boundary. So the coordinate system, very high resolution coordinate system, that this particular plot is this from here to here. What is that measurement? What is that area? What is that territory? So you cannot just actually jump onto somebody else's geography or land. So this is a very important topic, I would say. I think, you know if you look at, this is a very progressive thought, but it will be very difficult to implement, I must say that, because of, again, it's a very economic issue. But the benefits will be very long term. First of all, it will bring a lot of legal and social benefit to the actually owner of the property. So it will be, in my opinion, zameen se jaydad wali baat hai ye, कि how to actually transition from land to property. This will become a property. It will give you clear title of ownership. It will streamline the administrative process. It will bring reduction into the disputes and bring
Yeah.
transparency. And most important for the real estate market, it will bring ease of transactions.
Correct. So you've said, you've mentioned disputes. If you look at the cases in high courts and lower courts across top cities of India, I think I'd read some number. I'll accept that this number may not be right, but what I remember is that 2/3 of the litigations in civil courts today are land and property related. At least it is a disproportionately
Absolutely.
high number. All right, Ashwin, I'm going to come to you. Land transactions are done, property transactions are done. I'm also very curious to understand that a lot of land and property is, obviously people are not paying property tax either. So if you look at Delhi, such a curious case, the three power distribution companies, BSES Yamuna, BSES Rajdhani and Tata Power, have about 68 lakh users, or let's say there are 68 lakh connections and bills which are raised and paid. But Municipal Corporation of Delhi has only 13 lakh property taxpayers. So clearly, there is so much leakage, and one thing we are battling with is that municipal corporations have no money to pay the workers to pick up the waste, to provide the basic services. So it's all so complicated. Even landowners are getting away by not paying property tax simply because there's no record, digitized record of them owning that land and property. Ashwin?
Okay, so great to be back on your show, Manisha. Thanks for having me. Just a few things. We do about hundreds of transactions every year, specifically in the luxury residential space. And if I look at, some pockets, for example, in Delhi, the entire property tax is being done on self-assessment basis. So a lot of people choose to pay lower taxes. A lot of people choose not to pay taxes, specifically for people who are owning farmhouses or legacy properties. So In essence, that is one of the reasons why you see this leak or this leakage between the disconnect between the number of people with registered electricity connections versus, for example, people who are paying property tax. I think it should be, rather than bottom up in terms of self-assessment, it should be clearly directed by the authorities, and then the onus will be on the property owners to comply with it. On the other hand, just wanted to add to what my co-panelists mentioned with regard to the issue of digitization of documents. So in our experience, we've seen this being a multinational company having 1,100 offices across the globe. We've seen digital use of land records across, whether it is the Americas, whether it is UK or Europe. And it not only, like mentioned, like highlighted, not only takes care of removing any title defects, but it also helps to let the property move on from one generation to another. We've seen several instances in our transactions in Lutyens Delhi, in Goa, in South Bombay, in older cities like Kolkata, where people have documents have got mutilated or documents are lost in the chain, which go back to over 150 years. And I think digitization of land records would really help in, omitting all of these issues for
Right.
the longer term.
Okay. Sanjay, let me come back to you. You said that it is going to be far more challenging in urban areas. And, again, here's my question to you is then how do you do it? I mean, you are the technology provider. How do you make it happen? And you also mentioned economics. So is it an expensive proposition to do it? Or is it just the fact that everyone needs to come together because cities are not managed by one person? There's a chief minister involved. He or she has a say. Sometimes there's a lieutenant governor involved, and there is a commissioner involved. There's multiplicity of authority as well, as we know. So where do you see biggest challenges and how can they be unlocked?
So the primarily challenges will be more of political and administrative nature. Technology does not at all find it challenging. Technologically, it is very much happening around the world. First of all, it's not something which we are doing first time. You have a set of technologies like from space to aerial to drone to terrestrial. Budget has specifically talked about terrestrial. Why? Because it needs to be very high quality resolution map.
Okay.
Even it should not actually go away by inches. So the demarcation of that land by inches. So why will it be challenging? Because of course, already a lot of construction has already happened. You cannot just break that. So it will be but technologically we have to define this is what it is, the status, and then administratively we have to accept it. So we have to accept it once.
Okay, so is it economically expensive as well? Is it an expensive proposition?
Nowhere in comparison to the.
Okay, all right. So it's not expensive. Let me just, sorry, I have to rush through this.
Yeah.
Here's my question to you. Do you think it will stop leakages of taxes and help beef up municipal corporation balance sheets, which are in tatters, other than Mumbai Municipal Corporation, which is loaded, but rest of the cities are not in a good shape?
Definitely, yes. And it has proven to be happening that in India, like city of Kanpur has implemented that much earlier and Mirzapur has implemented much earlier. And their tax revenues have gone up very high.
Wow. So there are examples that tax revenues of municipal corporations do go up if you digitalize all land and property records. Sanjay, thank you for joining me. I'm going to ask my two other guests to stay back because when we return, we're going to focus on the budget asking states to look at reducing stamp duty. They've also said that maybe make it even more easier or lower the cost of women owning property by reducing it further for them. Stay with us and we'll look into it. long-standing ask of the real estate industry to reduce the burden of taxes on home buyers. And the Finance Minister has urged states which levy high stamp duty to bring them down, especially for women. Now, in different Indian states, stamp duties that you pay to the government when you buy property and register it can range between 5 and 7%. Karnataka is probably an outlier because it has staggered duty, and for properties below 45 lakh rupees, this is residential properties, you have to pay lower rates of 2 and 3%. Now, most states do have a lower stamp duty for both joint ownership between a man and a woman, and probably a slightly better rate for just women. Yet, there is a sort of a directive from the Finance Minister to reduce them further. But they can't do it, the states have to do it. Mr. Hiranandani, tell me why.
For the simple reason that land is a state subject under the Constitution.
No, that's all right. We understand that. Why should we bring down stamp duty? I should have rephrased my question. Mr. Hiranandani, why do you think we should bring down the stamp duties?
The reason we need to bring down the stamp duty is because the cost of property today is onerous because of the various costs and charges which have been charged. For instance, let's take an average property in Mumbai. 50% of its cost is taxes, whether it is stamp duty, whether it's development charge, whether it is additional FSI cost, whether it is land under construction cost, whether it is GST, etc. So if you take an apartment, 50% of it directly or indirectly goes to the coffers of the local authority, state government, and the central government. Now, they have realized one thing, that if you are making the housing unaffordable, then you will retain 50% of the people in Mumbai to still live in jhopatpattis. So the richest city in India, Mumbai, has 50% of its population living in jhopatpattis, and half of them could afford a house if you brought down the land values and the cost and taxes over here. Fortunately for us, let me tell you, Manisha, they actually brought it down during COVID. They reduced the stamp duty by 3%. They also reduced the development charge by 50%. And there was a huge growth in affordable housing segment, which took place in that period during the COVID period. Can you imagine? In spite of the COVID period.
I do know sales went up, Mr. Hiranandani, but I'm not sure whether affordable housing stock went up.
Both went up. The affordable housing in the peripheral of Mumbai also went up, and also this went up. So it was both the segments that actually went up. Overall the
and the state revenues increased. So even with lower stamp duty, you can have state earning more revenues. There's a clear case in Maharashtra and Mumbai. Ashwin, what's your logic? Because, we are at 5 to 7% is very high, but a lot of states are in that 5% range, isn't it?
So, Manisha, I'm going to give a slightly tangential input over here. If you look at what the FM is advocating is rationalization of taxes across financial and non-financial assets on one hand. On the other hand, there is a talk of digitization of land records. I correlate this to dematerialization of shares, which was, a phenomena which took place quite a few years back. And we all know where it took the whole share market to. So in my opinion, likewise, if we are wanting to bring land or physical or property assets in conjunction or in correlation with financial assets, we should definitely reduce the stamp duty, because guess what? There is no stamp duty or minimalistic stamp duties, negligible stamp duties on buying financial assets. So much so, if you look at developed countries, in the US, stamp duties are less than 2%. If you look at UK as an example, they have a graded stamp duty system, which is dependent on the value of the property and not in terms of who's buying it, whether it is a male or a female. So I think there is a lot that can be done, a lot of innovation, but the good part is that there is already a clear-cut direction given by the center on rationalization and simplification.
All right. I'll have to conclude there, gentlemen, but thank you so much. Two extremely important topics covered. Why do we need land digitalization, both for, clearer home ownership, property ownership, and also the rationale behind bringing stamp duties down. Good intentions, we now have to wait for the implementation, which is, of course, always be the biggest challenge when it comes to anything to do with urban India. Thank you so much for watching.